The great hall shimmered with 1,000 flames, each torch reflecting in the golden walls of Aeloria's court. At the center, suspended above an obsidian dais, the crown of Aeloria pulsed with light, alive, judging, ancient. When it was my turn, silence swept across the chamber. A human stepping where only bloodlines had ever walked. My steps echoed too loud, my breath too rough. As I reached the dais, the crown's light reached for me. It was like fire poured into veins. Agony ripped through me, my knees buckled, and my hands slammed against cold stone. The crown's glow flared brighter, then rejected me with a force that left smoke rising from my skin. The herald's voice cut through the whispers. Unworthy. The word thundered in the chamber, repeated by mocking voices that filled the space. Like arrows. I wanted to crawl into the shadows, but she descended. Princess Serenia stepped down from the dais, her violet eyes sharp as forged steel. Her silver-gold hair caught the firelight, her every step defiance against the court. She did not hesitate. She lifted me to my feet with her hand, steady and sure. Gasps broke out across the room, outrage hissing from the elders. Yet her voice was calm when she said, "This one will not fall." Her hand remained against me long after the whispers turned to roars. The court spat venom in the days that followed. Nobles sneered as I passed, guards laughed, and servants turned away as if my presence were disease. My chambers were nothing but a stone cell granted out of pity. Yet each night Serenia came. She spoke not of pity, but of storms she foresaw, of fractures in the kingdom. "The crown does not measure worth," she whispered as we stood on a balcony under the starlight. "It measures obedience. You are dangerous because you do not kneel to it." Her words burned deeper than the crown's fire. The night of assassins proved her faith. They came silent, blades gleaming, shadows slipping past guards who turned their backs. I woke to steel at my throat, but instinct kept me alive. We fought together, clumsy yet fierce, her with a dagger, me with my bare fists. By dawn, blood slicked the marble floor, but none of it was hers. She stood at my side, chest heaving, her hand gripping mine. When the guards arrived, their faces pale, she declared in a voice that shook the hall, "You may call him unworthy. I call him mine." War soon followed. Rival claimants rose, brandishing bloodlines that pleased the relic. Armies gathered, villages burned, and the court grew frantic. Elders pressed her to bind herself to a warrior prince, to discard me like refuse. But she only turned to me, placing a sword in my hand. "The throne may never be yours," she said, her voice unwavering. "But the battlefield will listen to you. Lead, and they will follow." For the first time, I held not a borrowed blade, but a command forged in trust. The soldiers sneered when I first took the field. They muttered that I was nothing but the crown's reject, a shadow of their true princes. Yet when the ambush came in the ravines of Kareth, it was I who saw the trap, I who led them through the storm of arrows. I bled with them, shielded them, roared with them. By nightfall, the field was ours. The men who had spat at me shouted my name, though they tried to disguise it as war cries. Serenia met me after that battle, her armor bloodied, her eyes blazing with triumph. She pressed her forehead to mine, a gesture sacred among her people, one no outsider should have ever received. "Do you see?" she whispered. "The crown is blind. The people see." Her hand lingered on my cheek, the same hand that had lifted me before the court. And in her eyes, for the first time, I believed. Yet shadows still gathered. A usurper king rose, claiming the crown's blessing, his armies swelling with zealots who believed relic over flesh. His banners blackened the horizon, his soldiers marching like thunder toward Aeloria's gates. Inside the city, panic reigned. The court begged the crown to save them, but the relic only flickered, dim and dying, as though its fire had grown. Weary of choosing, on the eve of that siege, Serenia came to me. She found me sharpening a blade, my hands trembling though I denied it. She laid her hand over mine, steadying the steel, her gaze locking mine with unshakable certainty. "The crown marked you unworthy," she said. "So rise higher than crowns. Tomorrow we do not fight for relics. We fight for each other, for them, for Eloria." Her words rooted in me deeper than stone. The night before war, I stood at the balcony once more, looking at the twin moons hanging over a city drowning in fear. For the first time, I did not feel the sting of rejection. I felt the fire of a promise. The crown had marked me unworthy, but her hand had never let me fall. And tomorrow I would rise, not as king, but as something more. The siege began at dawn. From the walls of Eloria, I watched the usurper's army march, a black tide stretching across the plain. 10,000 spears caught the rising sun, their edges glinting like fire. War drums shook the earth, drowning out the prayers whispered by terrified courtiers behind us. The crown, suspended within the hall, flickered weakly, its fire failing as though even relics could fear. But beside me, Serenia's voice cut the air. "Let them come. We are not waiting for a crown to save us." The first assault hit with the weight of a storm. Siege towers rattled forward, their massive wheels crushing earth, arrows blotting the sky. Soldiers manned the walls around me, their eyes wide with terror. Many looked to me as though still uncertain whether to follow or flee. I drew my sword, high, the steel catching sunlight, and roared words not of royalty but of survival. "The crown will not bleed for you, but I will." The walls shook as the enemy struck, but so too did the soldiers' hearts ignite with defiance. We fought until our arms were lead, until stone itself seemed to weep blood. I clashed with a war captain atop the walls, his blade heavier than mine, his strength fueled by belief in his false king. He sneered as he pressed me back, spitting, "The relic rejected you. Even the crown knows your worth is dust." But I met his strike with one fueled not by relics, but by fire in my chest. With a roar, I drove my blade through his guard, cutting him down as the soldiers around us cried out in triumph. When the towers fell, burning in pyres of oil and flame, I found Serenia again at the gates. She was bloodied, her armor dented, but her eyes blazed with fury that could have shamed the suns themselves. She fought not as royalty, but as a warrior born. Together, we held the breach until the last wave broke against us. At dusk, the usurpers' horns called retreat. Eloria still stood. But it was only the first day. Night fell heavy with smoke. Fires dotted the horizon, the enemy regrouping. Inside the city, the council convened in panic. They demanded Serenia abandon me, that she appease the relic by casting me aside. I was summoned to stand trial once more, this time not by fire, but by words sharp as daggers. Elders spat accusations, blasphemy, corruption, weakness. Some called for my exile, others my execution. Serenia rose before them, her voice cold as tempered steel. "You would place faith in a crown that cannot bleed for you, but reject the man who bleeds daily at your gates. Tell me, which is unworthy?" Her defiance cracked their resolve, though hatred still lingered in their eyes. That night, we stood together on the palace balcony, looking out at the enemy fires. My hands shook as I leaned against the rail, exhaustion clawing at me. Serenia's hand covered mine, her touch grounding, commanding. "You fight for them though they curse you. That is why they will follow. Tomorrow, we break the tide not with relics, but with will." She leaned closer, her voice a whisper only I could hear. "Do you understand? You are more than they will ever allow themselves to see. The second day came with thunder and flame. The usurper himself marched now, his banner of black fire rising high. His soldiers advanced like a tide without end, their chant a drumbeat of doom. This time they unleashed the beasts of war, creatures. Bred in pits, plated in steel, their roars shaking the walls. Fear tore through our soldiers. Some faltered, some fled. I felt despair gnawing at me, but Serenya's voice cut through the din. Lead them, or lose them. So I leapt down from the walls, sword in hand, landing in the dust where even kings would not tread. Soldiers saw me and cried out in disbelief, then in fury. They surged forward, shields raised, voices lifting not the name of the crown but my own. The battle was chaos, fire and steel, screams and thunder. I cut through beast and man alike, every strike of my blade echoing the promise I had made, that I would bleed where relics would not. By dusk of the second day, the plain was soaked in blood. We had pushed them back once more, but our strength frayed. The usurper's laughter carried across the field, his voice like iron. You will fall, crownless one. No hand can raise you higher. His words clung like poison, yet Serenya's presence beside me burned them away. She looked at me as though she already knew the truth he denied. On the third night, the enemy's great engines rolled forward, massive constructs of steel and fire designed to shatter walls. The people of Aeloria cowered, their hope dim as the relic's glow. The court hid in prayer, but Serenya stood in the square before them all, lifting her bloodied sword. She did not call upon the crown. She called upon them. You have kings and relics that sit idle, but you have one who stands with you. Will you follow him? And the crowd, hesitant at first, began to chant, not for relics, not for bloodlines, but for me. The fourth day dawned, and the city awoke to a different sound. Soldiers and civilians alike shouted my name as they took up arms. The relic's fire flickered faintly in the hall, but its light no longer mattered. The people had chosen their own. As we marched to the gates once more, Serenya's hand gripped, mine, firm and certain. They called you unworthy, she said, her eyes fierce. But today they rise because of you. Remember this, you are higher than crowns. The gates thundered open, and we surged forward into the storm. The clash was deafening, steel against steel, fire against flesh, will against fate. The usurper's forces reeled under the weight of defiance they had never expected. And in the midst of chaos, I fought with her at my side, every strike, every breath, a testament to the truth she had given me, that worth is not in crowns, but in the hands that choose to raise us higher. The ninth day dawned blood-red, the sky veined with smoke from burning villages beyond the walls. The usurper marched at last, not with words from afar, but with his own blade in hand. His armor gleamed black as obsidian, crowned with firelight, every step a hammer beat of certainty. His army moved behind him like a shadow given flesh. From the walls, our soldiers trembled, not at the sight of 10,000 spears, but at the figure who seemed more relic than man. I stood on the gatehouse, sword gripped so tight my knuckles cracked. Serenya climbed beside me, her presence grounding me against the tide of fear. The usurper's voice rang across the plain, booming like thunder. Aeloria, surrender the pretender. Give me the crownless one, and I will spare your city. Defy me, and you will burn. All eyes turned to me, doubt cut deep, sharper than any blade. Yet Serenya spoke before I could falter. He does not stand as pretender. He stands as our shield. Her voice carried farther than his roar. And for the first time, the crowd did not look to the relic, but to us. The gates opened, and the battle was joined. Steel crashed against steel, arrows darkened the sky, and the roar of beasts shook the earth. I cut through the tide like a man already marked by death, every wound burning, every strike a defiance. Soldiers rallied to my side, their chants louder than war drums. Serenia moved like fire incarnate, her blade a storm that tore through lines of armored zealots. For hours we held, the field drowning in smoke and screams, until the usurper himself strode forward. He fought like no mortal man. His blade was forged in the fires of the relic, each strike heavy enough to shatter shields. I met him on the scorched ground, our swords colliding in a storm of sparks. He sneered through his helm. "The crown named you nothing, and nothing. You shall remain." His strength bore me down, driving me to my knees. The world dimmed, the jeers of his men echoing like thunder. Then Serenia's voice pierced through the chaos. "Rise!" she screamed, her words more command than plea. Her hand met mine for the briefest instant, her touch steady even in the storm. And something in me ignited, not relic, not prophecy, but will. I surged upward with a roar, meeting the usurper's next strike and turning it aside. The battlefield itself seemed to pause as our blades clashed again and again, each impact shaking the plain. We fought until the sky darkened with smoke and twilight bled across the horizon. The usurper's strength faltered as his disbelief grew. With one final strike, I drove my sword through his guard, piercing black armor and the man beneath. His roar turned to a ragged gasp before silence claimed him. The usurper fell, and with him, his army's certainty shattered. Their lines broke, scattering into chaos, fleeing into the night. The plain was ours. When the dust settled, the people of Aloria gathered in the great hall. The relic crown hovered still, dim and weak, its judgment a hollow echo of what had passed. Elders urged Serenia to take it, to bind herself to its fading light. Instead, she turned, her hand finding mine before the court. Her voice carried through the chamber, sharper than steel. "The crown marked him unworthy. Yet I have seen him bleed for you, fight for you, rise where relics failed. If you will not follow a crown, then follow us." Whispers became roars. Soldiers struck their weapons against the floor, the sound rising into a thunder that filled the hall. Not for relic, not for tradition, but for defiance, for survival, for us. The crown's glow sputtered and died, its fire extinguished by the will of the people it had failed to protect. The era of relics ended in that moment. In the days that followed, we rebuilt. Villages rose from ashes, walls were mended, and the people learned to look not to hovering gems, but to the hands that lifted them when they fell. Serenia and I walked among them, not as queen and king, not as relic-chosen rulers, but as leaders forged in battle. Her hand never left mine, the same hand that had raised me from the dais when the crown cast me down. Years later, when songs of the war were sung, bards never spoke of relics or bloodlines. They spoke of the shield who bled where kings had hidden, of the princess who defied her people to stand at his side. They sang of the night the crown dimmed, and of the dawn when a new fire rose, born not of gems, but of choice. They had called me unworthy, but her hand had raised me higher, and in that, truth Aloria endured.